Hi, Paul Nashawaty coming to you live from Open Source Summit 2026 in Minneapolis. I'm here in the Edera booth with Alex. How you doing, Alex?
Pretty good. How about you?
Fantastic. What a show. It's great. I mean, I
Yes.
love this show because it's small, it's intimate,
Yes.
but like the real conversations are having. What are your thoughts?
Yes. I love Open Source Summit because you get a wider variety of people,
Yeah.
right? And the types of things that are in here it's honestly slightly less corporate, and so you get a lot of like the people who influence like the systems like Linux and stuff from a perspective that is different than say a KubeCon. So it's great for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of practitioners here. There's
Yes.
a lot of learning going on here.
Right.
And then, like there's a lot of the sessions, the announcements were really relevant to today's topics that are happening in the
Yes.
market. So, I definitely think that when we talk about Edera, well, let's start there. Where does Edera fit into the open source community and,
Yes.
security?
So we have a number of things that we do in open source. I mean, our product is focused on running containers and Linux and those kinds of things. And we do virtualization, and we work with like the Zen project, which is part of the Linux Foundation. And Linux obviously being the main one. But we also do a lot of things in like bootloaders and other tech like that we enjoy doing. So, we get to influence a lot from our position. And so I really enjoy the open source community for that reason because it's sort of the symbiotic relationship with open source and products like ours, and we care really deeply about investing in those things and having conversations with people.
Well, absolutely. And then if we look at it, runtime security is definitely an area that is you want it to just work.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to think about it.
Right.
And this is where it's a fast time to value using Adara to kind of let you do that.
Yes.
But I definitely think with some of the announcements that came out,
Yes.
how does that tie into the Adara messaging?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. I mean, AI is obviously a big deal right now.
Yep.
There's, we've been looking a lot about how we manage resources and things at Edera, and it's actually really interesting how, everyone always thinks that their problem is the only problem, and then you come here and you realize everyone has shared problems,
Yep.
right? So everything that happens across the ecosystem affects us, and we affect the ecosystem, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the types of things that we're announcing, and then the things that other people are announcing, all influence each other. It's incredibly interesting to me seeing the open source ecosystem all come together like this because we get to actually work together on really cool things, and there's so many things that we align on. We're vendors here and vendors there, but in reality, like we all use Linux. We stand on the shoulders of giants, right?
Right. Right.
And the Linux Foundation being the obvious one, where all their projects really are what we all build upon.
Yeah, I mean, seeing Linus talk today
Yes.
at the keynote was actually really interesting. And one of the topics, of course, came up was security.
Yes.
Right. And so the buzz around the show floor is also around Mythos.
Yeah.
So what is Edera doing around Mythos?
So Edera and Mythos have a very interesting story. So, Mythos is something that I'm very personally afraid of. Not because of the model itself, and I think this has been lost in the conversation. It's not just that Mythos is powerful, and whether it is or whether it isn't, it's kind of irrelevant. But Mythos has brought a new vigor to the security ecosystem. I think AI models in general have done that, but especially Mythos, around how we actually solve these problems. And Linux in particular, I mean, all the recent vulnerabilities, they might be AI assisted, they might involve humans, but it honestly doesn't matter because it's all a relationship with each other, right? Like, if an AI agent or AI models find vulnerabilities, it doesn't really matter if it's an AI model or a human. Ultimately, it's making people find more vulnerabilities in Linux.
Yeah.
And our security product is super critical to solving those problems. We build it on a security model that assumes that things are going to be broken. Because to be honest, in the last week, it's been more broken than ever.
Right.
Like, it feels chaotic in a sense that I can't describe with the industry right now. It feels like there's a new vulnerability every day that's breaking things. There's, instability, there's problems that occur, and we're here to solve all of those problems with our runtime security.
So do you feel that Mythos has kind of hyperinflated right now? Do you think there's a lot of like clickbait going on out there? Do you think it's a real problem that people need to be concerned and worried about?
I think it is a real problem that people need to be worried about. I think everything is inflated to some degree.
That's fair.
There is power in hype, but the hype can be real. And I think, we want to see things in black and white, like it's Mythos is nothing or it's the craziest thing that ever happened to humanity. And the answer is it's somewhere in the middle, right? Um, I really consider the second order effects, though, of what happens with these types of vulnerabilities and the ability to find vulnerabilities. And we published a blog post that I really enjoy called "The Cost of an Exploit is an API Call Now."
Yep.
And I think that's a really interesting point because it changes the economics of exploits. And regardless of whether the model is hyped or not, that is a real thing that is happening because even if the AI models are not finding a vulnerability and a human is involved, people are now more influenced than ever to release those vulnerabilities in a particular way. And 0 days are bigger than ever, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, let's talk about this. When we look at Edera, we look at hardened images. There's a lot of companies talking about hardened images and what
Mhm.
they're doing. A lot of vendors are out there kind of touting that. What makes Edera's? What's the special sauce?
Yeah, so our special sauce is that we take images, hardened or not, and run them in a way where we're able to still secure them. So we provide you a blast box to be able to run trusted or untrusted code in. And by doing that, not only can we protect systems that have well-patched images, say Minimus, for example,
Yep.
we can also protect things that don't have that, or people who are bringing images that aren't have tons of vulnerabilities. We're able to really protect those things from exploits and reduce the impact of an exploit. So both known and unknown vulnerabilities are occurring in the container space.
Right.
And we just announced this partnership with Minimus primarily because they patch vulnerabilities quickly, and we also want to be able to solve vulnerabilities that don't get patched, all in the same solution.
Yeah, and that makes it easier, right? You're reducing complexity, faster time to value. You have faster delivery. That I think is important. I think those are the two areas that between complexity and maturity
Yes.
within organizations, people don't quite understand how to get going.
Yes.
But what? So let's just, Alex. I know we're coming to the end of this, but like, what are the top three things you want the audience to know about?
I think that fundamentally, I feel that the way that we do containers today without the solution like Edera is fundamentally broken. Like, we have thought about containers in a way that they are not. Everyone thinks that containers are about security. We have faked the idea that they are virtualized or virtual machines when they are not. Containers are not the security boundary. So that's the number one thing I want people to remember, and that's why you need a solution like Edera. I would say the next most important thing is that open source matters. I would say that open source has gotten a bad reputation, but it still matters. It's still a fundamental thing that we build off of. And we have to build the technologies like Edera to be able to protect those systems. And then I would say third, like take exploits and vulnerabilities seriously. Like the thing that I most fear is that people will think that these vulnerabilities are rare, but then another one came out this week, and then it'll keep happening that these vulnerabilities, like local privilege escalation and things like that in Linux, are going to continue to happen.
Right.
We have to build fundamentally to solve these problems, and that's where a solution like Edera comes
It sounds like you being a watchdog over it makes a lot of sense.
in. Yes.
Alex, always great having you on. Always great having the conversation with you. Thank you for
Yeah,
being on.
absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And thank you for watching. Paul Nashawaty coming to you live from Open Source Summit 2026.